All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking the massive and honestly often unseen environmental footprint of healthcare facilities. When we think of hospitals, our minds naturally go straight to patient care, life-saving surgeries, and amazing medical breakthroughs. But behind those sterile doors and humming machines, it's a colossal industrial operation. So we're going to break down the critical sustainability challenges these facilities face, zeroing in specifically on energy and waste management.
It's kind of a fascinating paradox, isn't it? Hospitals are places entirely dedicated to healing and preserving life, yet their massive 24/7 operations can actually inadvertently harm the very environment that sustains us. So how do you even begin to measure the environmental cost of saving a life? The reality is that the healthcare delivery industry, which runs everything from your local neighborhood clinic to massive sprawling hospital networks, demands just an extraordinary amount of resources.
There's this really stark contrast between the mission of care and the high fixed cost required to actually provide it. Healthcare delivery is intensely unique because of its sky-high labor and facility costs. Think about it. Operating a surgical center or a clinical lab requires round-the-clock power, incredibly strict climate control, and the constant safe disposal of highly specialized materials. Because of this immense scale, environmental sustainability isn't just some nice-to-have bonus. It's a completely critical operational challenge for survival.
Okay, here is our roadmap for today's explainer. First, the hidden environmental footprint. Second, massive energy consumers. Third, tracking energy and renewables. Fourth, the medical waste challenge. Fifth, managing pharmaceutical hazards. And finally, why these metrics actually matter.
Section 1. The hidden environmental footprint and identifying the standards. Let's start with how we actually identify and measure this invisible footprint in the real world.
To manage something as complex as a hospital network's impact, we absolutely need official, standardized frameworks. So we're using the SASB standards, which are now under the stewardship of the International Sustainability Standards Board, or ISSB. Think of this as our ultimate toolkit for this explainer. These standards lay out industry-specific disclosure topics and metrics to help entities identify their specific risks and opportunities. It's really not just about being green. It's about giving concrete, useful information to investors and stakeholders so they can see exactly how well these hidden costs are being managed.
Notice how rigorously these specific topics are categorized here. If you look at this table straight from the standards, you'll see a bunch of sustainability topics for healthcare delivery. But right at the very top, demanding immediate attention, are energy management and waste management. These are highly quantitative metrics. We're talking gigajoules and metric tons. This proves we aren't dealing with vague environmental pledges. This is about hard, actionable data.
Moving right along to Section 2, massive energy consumers and the true cost of heating, cooling, and care. Let's look at our first major resource strain.
So the crucial point here is that energy efficiency isn't just an ecological issue, it is literally a business survival strategy. Healthcare facilities are incredibly energy intensive. To put this into perspective, a single large hospital can use as much energy as an entire small town. They rely heavily on purchased electricity and direct fuel to power life-saving equipment, keep environments totally sterile, and keep the lights on 24/7. But this heavy reliance on fossil fuels and the conventional grid exposes them to severe price volatility. By improving efficiency, hospitals can slash their costs and dodge those wild energy price fluctuations.
Section 3. Tracking energy and renewables, and the 3 crucial metrics involved. Let's see exactly what the standard requires facilities to track to manage this risk.
First up, facilities have to report their total energy consumed in gigajoules. This includes everything, from direct fuel usage to purchased electricity, plus heating, cooling, and steam. Interestingly, the standard even dictates that when calculating energy from fuels, facilities must use higher heating values or gross calorific values just to ensure absolute accuracy. Alongside that massive total number, they also have to report the exact percentage of energy coming from the public grid and the percentage coming from renewable sources.
And let's be super clear about what actually counts as renewable here. The standard defines it strictly as energy from sources replenished faster than they're depleted, like geothermal, wind, solar, hydro, and certified biomass. But here is the really fascinating part. To claim this renewable metric, facilities can't just buy green power and call it a day. No way. They must explicitly retain and retire the renewable energy certificates, or guarantees of origin. This proves the green power is truly theirs and hasn't just been sold off to someone else. It totally prevents double counting and forces actual accountability.
All right, Section 4, the medical waste challenge and the physical footprint of care. Transitioning from invisible energy, we now face a very visible problem.
And let me tell you, disposal fees for regulated medical waste are exceptionally high compared to your standard trash. When we talk about medical waste, we aren't just talking about office paper or leftover cafeteria food. We're talking about some surprisingly visceral categories. Regulated medical waste includes cultures and stocks of infectious agents. It includes pathological wastes, meaning human tissues, organs, and body fluids removed during surgery. You've got liquid waste, human blood, and IV bags. Then there are SHRPs, like used hypodermic needles, scalpels, and broken glass. It even includes animal waste from research and isolation waste from highly communicable diseases. Managing all of this safely requires incredibly strict protocols and generates massive costs.
Hospitals obviously can't just toss this stuff into a dumpster out back. The standard requires them to report precisely how many metric tons of this waste end up incinerated, how much is recycled or treated, and how much is ultimately landfilled. And get this, even if a hospital uses a third-party waste broker, the standard clearly states they still have to make a good faith effort to track down the final disposition method. There's really no looking away once the waste leaves the loading dock.
Section 5. Managing pharmaceutical hazards, looking at ignitability, corrosivity, and toxicity. Now we need to look closely at a heavily regulated subset of that waste.
The standard forces a really strict comparison between hazardous and non-hazardous pharmaceutical waste. Hazardous pharma waste is dangerous stuff. It generally shows characteristics like being ignitable, corrosive, reactive, or toxic. If a facility happens to operate in a jurisdiction without local laws defining this, they actually have to defer to the UN Basel Convention to classify it. On the flip side, non-hazardous pharmaceutical waste includes solid waste, garbage, and refuse. But make no mistake, even the non-hazardous stuff needs special handling because it might contain controlled substances. Facilities are required to track the metric tons of both categories, and once again, report exactly what percentage is incinerated, treated, or landfilled.
Finally, Section 6, why these metrics matter, and how they create a universal language. Let's see how all this granular tracking builds a cohesive strategy.
So why do we actually need to know the exact gigajoules of energy and metric tons of incinerated scalpels? Well, because what gets measured gets managed. By adopting this universal language laid out in the SASB standards, healthcare providers can deeply analyze their operations. For instance, if they see their grid electricity percentage is way too high, they might invest in on-site solar and retain those energy certificates to dodge price volatility. If their incinerated hazardous waste tonnage is spiking, they can improve their waste segregation at the source. This data does double duty. It protects their bottom line from skyrocketing utility fees while tangibly protecting the planet.
I want to end on this thought for you to chew on. We rely entirely on hospitals to cure us, to treat our illnesses, and to be our safe havens during emergencies. But can the future of healthcare truly be healthy if the facilities themselves are not sustainable? By shining a light on the hidden environmental costs of energy and waste, we can really start pushing for a healthcare system that heals the patient without harming the earth. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I hope it leaves you looking at your local hospitals in a whole new, much greener light.